What's up guys, and welcome back to another Pokemon Sun and Moon video, and today I felt like going through all of the new moves that have been introduced in the games. We went through the abilities the other day, as well as the Pokemon and the forms and everything, but the moves are, obviously, it's just something I really enjoy about a new generation. I realised today, all the new moves, because it's all stuff you haven't seen before, and you get to figure it out and know what it's all about. And obviously it affects the competitive scene in a few small ways, so it's going to be fun to look through. So I'm going to look through every single new move. I think there's 51, so there's quite a few. I'll try and be as quick as possible and as brief as possible, but I'm going to talk about obviously what the moves do, as well as what Pokemon they're available on, and obviously how this might impact and whether they're useful or not. So first up we have this move called Shore Up. The user regains up to half of its max health points. It restores more health points in a sandstorm. So basically it's similar to Synthesis. It's for Sandygast and Palossand only, but it seems like it says up to half of its max health points, it restores more in a sandstorm. So if you're in a sandstorm, you get half health points restored. If you're not in a sandstorm, probably about like 25%, so it doesn't seem like it's getting an amazing move. And in terms of Palossand's competitive integrity, probably not too high anyway, so it's not going to be an amazing move that you're going to see spammed everywhere. It's just a very simple health point restoration for Palossand, basically. Next, though, we have First Impression. I spoke about this move when I was talking about Golisopod's stats, and this is the new move it gets. It's very similar to Fake Out. As you can see, although this move has great power, it only works the first turn the user is in a battle. So it's 90 base power, it's a physical bug type move, and as I said, it's similar to Fake Out in that it goes first, but only used first time. It doesn't flinch the opponent either, and it's only used the first turn in battle, so it could be useful for Golisopod if you come in, your first impression, you do decent damage, then you get lowered to half health points, you get sent out, you can come back in the game later on, and you can use first impression once more. And it's 90 base power, which is pretty high, so it's going to be interesting to see. And when you end up battling Guzma for the first time, watch out for that move. It caught me off guard, and yeah, that was a funny one. But moving on further, we then have Baneful Bunker. Now I'm really excited for this move as well, because it's very similar to Spiky Shield that was introduced last generation. As you can see, in addition to protecting the user from attacks, this move also poisons any attacker that makes direct contact. So basically it's like Spiky Shield, but instead of doing damage if they make contact, they poison it. It poisons the target. So, it's only available on Toxapex, it's worth noting, but Toxapex, hunkers down in its thing, and then Chestnut, let's say, I don't know why it would be Chestnut, but why not? Chestnut comes in with a Grass Hammer, and then it gets poisoned. And this works in very good sort of conjunction with one of Toxapex's abilities, which is Toxapex's, I suppose, ability, which is Merciless, which means whenever you're attacking a poisoned target, you always get a critical hit, so it could be good. Not saying Toxapex is offensive, of course, because it's not, it's a defensive Pokemon, but it could be useful in some situations. But apart from that, Toxapex is defensive, so instead of using Protect every other turn or so, you can use Baneful Bunker, and if the opponent is silly enough or slips up and you make a good prediction, then of course you can get nice poison off without having to use a turn to do Toxic. So moving further on, then we have the starter sort of signature moves. First of these is Spirit Shackle, of course, for Decidueye. The user attacks while simultaneously stitching the target's shadow to the ground to prevent the target from escaping. So it's sort of a combo, so you attack and then the target cannot leave battle, basically. 80 base power, so it's not amazing, but it's pretty good because it locks the target in battle, and of course in certain situations, in terms of competitive, you could want to do that, because obviously if you switch out, it depends on the situation, of course, but it could be pretty decent. Decidueye, I don't think it's going to see a huge amount of play there, especially in the higher tiers, so it's not going to be a very impactful move, but it could be good if you're running a Decidueye, of course. Then we have obviously Incineroar and its signature move, which is Darkest Lariat. Now the user swings both arms, hits the target. The stat changes don't affect this attack's damage, so of course if they've increased their defense, then you just ignore it, basically. So it could be useful in some situations, but generally it's just going to be a base 85 power move, which is decently high. Physical, dark again, so supporting the second typing here. So it could be useful, and I think Incineroar might see a bit more play than Decidueye, so it could be useful in some situations to run Darkest Lariat as your dark type move, in the rare case that someone is iron defensing up, and of course you just want to sort of get around that. Moving on then to the last starter, of course we have Primarina and Sparkling Aria. This one is basically the user bursts into song, emitting many bubbles. Any Pokemon suffering from a burn will be healed by a touch of these bubbles. So it's a special move, it's 90 base power, which is the highest out of all of them, for some reason, and as well as this, it also heals any burns on the field, and it's sort of the whole field. If you're in a double battle, it affects everyone, I believe at least. So it can be used in double battles to heal burns of your teammates, allies, but it could also be used to heal burns of your opponent if, of course, there is an opponent using a burn orb. In some situations that could be used, or it could work in your sort of against you if you have burned an opponent and you've sent your Primarina out. You can't really use this move because then you're removing that advantage you have. So it might be good in some situations, but we'll have to see how good, I suppose. Moving on next, though, we have Ice Hammer, which is for Crabominable, and this is a physical ice move, 100 base power, so it's very quite powerful, so it's very powerful, but it lowers Crabominable's speed as well. However, it has pretty low speed already at like 35, I think, so you're probably not going to be too bored about that. Ice Hammer will probably be a decent move for it to be using. Only Crabominable gets it, so not much to look out there apart from that. Moving on then, we have Floral Healing. This is Comfy's signature move, only this Pokemon gets it, and it restores the target's health points by up to half, but restores more when it's on grassy terrain. So probably similar to the initial move we looked at for Palossand. If you're on grassy terrain, you get half health points restored. If you're not, you get less, possibly. And it's only on target, so it's not for yourself. So it could be used in VGC and double battles, of course, because Comfy is pretty quick, and of course it has an ability to increase priority of healing moves, so it's very useful in that sort of sense. So maybe combo it with Tapu Bulu, and Comfy can keep it healed up. Tapu Bulu brings in the grassy terrain. A nice combo could be seen there. So that's Comfy. Moving on, that's the move for Comfy. Moving on next, we have the first sort of multi-Pokemon move, which is High Horsepower. Now, this is a physical ground move, 95 base power, 95% accuracy, and 10 PP. Yeah. The user fiercely attacks the target using its entire body, and this is gained by the Snorlax line. So Snorlax gets access to it, also by Golett and Galurk, and then Mudbray learns it at like level 24 as well. So it's got a few different options, although all three of these lines also can learn Earthquake, so whether or not that's, okay, Earthquake's like, what, base 100 base power, and it's more, and it's got 100% accuracy, so I don't think there's any real reason to run High Horsepower, especially in a competitive environment, so not much to talk about there. Another signature move next is Strength Sap for Shiinotic, and this restores its health points by the same amount as the target's attack stat, and also lowers the attack stat, so basically strength sapping, so sapping the strength as well as gaining something back from it. So this could be useful in certain situations. I don't think Shiinotic is going to have a huge competitive impact, but it could be useful for it to hold rather than having, you'll probably run Leech Seed on it anyway, but rather than having something like Synthesis, you can run Strength Sap, and obviously any physical attackers out there, you're going to be able to get a lot more health points back, and of course you're going to be able to lower their attack stat as well. Now, we don't know what sort of conversion is, so if it's like, okay, if they have 100 attack, do you get 100 health points, or is it like percentage wise? We don't know. We'll have to see how it works in terms of mechanics and how useful it might be there. Next is another grass type move, and this is for Lurantis, signature to Lurantis, and it's a physical grass move which is Solar Blade, so basically the physical version of Solar Beam, exactly the same sort of setup, takes in the sun one turn and then attacks the next. 125 base power, so it's quite powerful, but again, Lurantis is the only one that gets it, so if Lurantis makes sees some use in competitive, it will be in terms of using a Solar Blade with a Sunny Day team, so we'll see how that turns out. Next up we have Leafage, which is a very basic grass type move, as you know, which Rowlet gets, 40 base power. Rowlet gets it, Fomantis gets it, and then Tapu Bulu also gets it as its like basic move. So really it's just a 40 base power move, there's nothing to talk about. We're just going to move swiftly on to the next move, which is Spotlight. Now this is a status move and shines a spotlight on the target so that only the target will be attacked during this current turn. This is gotten by the Clefairy line, as well as a Staryu line, Spinder, and then Morlul and Shiinotic as well get it. When I say they get the move, it's either TM, Level Up, or by Egg move as well, or Tutor even. So it could be a useful move. Basically it says everyone attacks this guy, so it could be useful in VGC, in the case of you can make, I don't know whether it redirects attacks to that target, or whether if there are any other attacks going elsewhere, that they won't happen. It's unclear in terms of the description, but either one would be good. You either redirect all your targets to the opponent's Pokemon, so even they attack themselves, or you could say Spotlight yourself in terms of Clefable, if you are able to tank up all your all the moves, because of course you might have a second Pokemon which is an attacker but quite frail. So in which case Clefable takes all the attacks every turn, and the attacker then kills the enemy Pokemon basically. So it could be useful in that sort of sense. Then we have Toxic Thread, which is a move for Spinarak and Ariados, which shoots poisonous threads to poison the target as well as lowering the target's speed stat. So basically it's like Poison Powder, except it has better accuracy and it lowers the target's speed, so it could be pretty good for Ariados. I don't think it's going to make Ariados be competitively viable in many high tiers at all, but it could just be a nice little thing to have, you know, okay, you can poison and slow at the same time, pretty good. But probably not quite as good as Toxic in the end, because it's not badly poisoning, it's just normal poison. So, then we have Laser Focus, which is an interesting one. It's a normal move, and the user concentrates intensely. The attack on the next turn always results in a critical hit. And this is gotten by 4 Pokemon, which are Mewtwo, Lucario, Kartana, which is one of the Ultra Beasts, and then Marshadow. So, obviously, 3 out of these 4 will likely just go straight to Ubers, so it wouldn't be a hugely impacting move there. But Lucario maybe could use it. I don't think it will be that useful for it though, because it means it has to spend a turn just setting up to just get a critical hit rather than just attacking 2 turns in a row and probably doing about the same amount of damage. So I don't think it's going to be that useful. It'll just be a little gimmick move that no one will ever use. Then we have Gear Up, which I think is going to be another gimmick one, but the user engages its gears to raise the attack and special attack stats of ally Pokemon with the plus or minus ability. So obviously only for those Pokemon it's relevant. So it's a steel type move, it's gotten by Clang as well as Magina. So again, it's not a very widespread move, and it only works with plus or minus, so off the top of my head I think the only Pokemon with plus or minus abilities, obviously Plusle and Minun. I think Clink gets it, you know, that line, but apart from that I can't really think of any more, and obviously none of those Pokemon are really that hugely used, and obviously it will only be useful in double battles anyway, so it's not a huge move. Then we have Throat Chop, which is a physical dark type move at 80 base power. It's gotten by the Sneasel line as well as the Litten line, so obviously Incineroar learns it, and then Sneasel gets it via an egg move, I think. It could be useful. It attacks the target's throat and then prevents any sound moves for 2 turns. So the secondary effect is a bit more of a... It might be useful in like 1 out of 100 cases, but generally it's not that useful. It's just an 80 base power dark type move, which could be pretty good in terms of base power, because I'm not too sure off the top of my head what other dark type moves there are, but it could be useful in terms of some matchups. Then, the 18th one, we have Pollen Puff, which is Rabombi's signature move. The user attacks the enemy with a Pollen Puff that explodes. If it's an ally, it instead restores health points. So basically, yeah, it just either heals your teammate or attacks the opponent. So generally it will be used for healing, because Rabombi is quite a fast Pokemon, so you'll be able to heal your allies in double battles, for example. It is a 90 base power though, so it could be used for some decent damage, but generally Rabombi is not going to be hugely used, so it's not an amazing move. Then we have Anchor Shot, which is a signature move basically for Delmise. Steel, physical move. Obviously Delmise is not a steel type, but it does have steel work as the ability, so it gets a bit of a boost there. Base 80 power. It's very similar to Spirit Shackle that Decidueye gets. The user entangles the target with his Anchor Chain. The target then becomes unable to flee. So basically exactly the same sort of thing, except a steel type move and for Delmise. So whether Delmise will be that used or not, we don't know. Or I don't know at least. Some of you may know, who knows. But it could be useful. Then we have Psychic Terrain, which of course is the new terrain we've had introduced. The move Psychic Terrain is sets up the Psychic Terrain basically. This is gotten by Mashana, Beheeyem, Oranguru via egg move, and then obviously Tapu Lele also learns the move as well as having the ability to set it up. So in terms of how used Psychic Terrain will be, assuming Tapu Lele goes off to Ubers or maybe it stays in OU, who knows, it could be useful in that sense. It screws up priority moves or protects priority moves, so it could be useful for that. Priority's had a bit of a nerf anyway in this generation, but powers up Psychic type moves could be quite useful for all 4 of these, because they're all Psychic types as well. So it could see some use, but I mean generally Beheeyem is not OU, I don't think. Mashana isn't really either, so who knows where Oranguru is going to go. Oranguru will be useful for VGC because of its signature move, as we'll see later on, Instruct, but apart from that I don't think any of these Pokemon are going to be amazingly used, apart from the Tapu Lele, but we'll see how it all settles out there. Then we have Lunge, which is another new bug type move. Physical, 80 base power, and it's gotten by these 5 Pokemon. Surskit and Masquerain, obviously. Just Mothim, so not the Burmy line, just Mothim. Dupida and Araquanid get it, and then obviously Buzzwole, one of the Ultra Beasts, as well as then Pheromosa, I think it is, if I remember correctly. I always get the end mixed up. Pheromosa gets it. Lunge, base power 80, so it's pretty good, and it also lowers the target's attack stat, so it could be useful in some cases like that, especially for possibly Araquanid, because it is defensive. It's more specially defensive than physically, So of course lowering the physical attack of your opponent would be helpful, because then it means you're not as vulnerable to the physical attack. So who knows whether that will be amazingly used, but it's quite an interesting move nonetheless. A very similar one is Fire Lash, which is gotten by Heatmore, and Heatmore I don't think is in their Alola deck, so I don't really know where this new move for it's going for, but it's only Heatmore that learns it, and it lowers the target's defense stat. It's physical, fire, 80 base power, so generally Heatmore isn't amazingly used, so I don't think this is going to really affect that. Just a simple move there. Then we have Power Trip, which is similar to Stored Power, whereas it's a base 20 power move, but it does more damage the more your stats are raised. It's gotten by Mankey and Primeape, Sandile, Krokorok and Crocodile, and then Pancham and Pangoro. I don't think it's going to be amazingly used because, I mean, Stored Power is useful for Espeon because it's quite a bulky Pokemon and can use Calm Mind, but for these three, unless of course they are going to be raising their stats using Bulk Up, which is a possibility I suppose, it's not going to be amazingly used. They have better Dark type moves to rely on to begin with, so I don't think it's going to be amazing sort of out there. Then we have Burnout, which is actually a really interesting move. To inflict massive damage, the user burns itself out. After using this move, the user will no longer be Fire type. It's a 130 power, it's a special move, which works for Arcanine in some cases, Typhlosion, and obviously I suppose Moltres too. 5 PP because you only use it once or twice in a battle, if that. So basically, for Arcanine and Typhlosion, they use this move, they burn out, they're no longer a Fire type. They are typeless. They take neutral damage from every single move in every single type in the game. In terms of Moltres, it loses the Fire type and becomes pure Flying, so obviously it's weak to Rock, Electric, Ice still, but apart from that, it's just taking, well, I mean, resists obviously fighting and such, but apart from that, same old, same old. So it's interesting because then obviously Arcanine and Typhlosion become neutral. It could be useful. Yes, okay, you don't have any resistances, but you have no weaknesses either, so it could be interesting. But of course, remember, you've lost the Fire type move, so you've lost your Fire type stab as well, so any future Fire type moves will not do as much damage. It could be quite useful to get rid of some key weaknesses. I'm assuming it doesn't last the whole battle. I'm assuming once you leave and go back to your party, you regain the type, but we'll have to see exactly how the mechanic works there. Next up, though, we have Speed Swap, which is a new swap move. The user exchanges speed stats with the target, so similar to Skill Swap. Instead of exchanging skills, you exchange, or exchanging abilities, you exchange speed stats. It's got by 4 Pokemon here, which is Alolan Raichu only, not normal Raichu, just Alolan, Emolga, Ribombee, and then Pheromosa. Obviously, Alolan Raichu is really quite fast. Emolga is decently fast, I suppose. Ribombee, as I mentioned earlier, is quite fast too, and I think Pheromosa is reasonably fast. So these Pokemon will be swapping their speed away, so they're saying, I don't need this speed, you can have the speed. Okay, obviously only useful in double battles and VGC again, so not amazingly impactful for straight up, 1v1 I suppose, unless of course you want to give your opponent the quite good speed you have, which I don't think you want to do generally, so I don't think it's going to be a huge move apart from a VGC. Next up though, we have Smart Strike. Now this is one of the new TMs as well, so a lot of Pokemon can learn this move. I've only featured a few down below. You can see anything with a horn basically can learn this. The user stabs a target with a sharp horn. This attack never misses, so it's like Aerial Ace for Steel types. So Steel, Physical, 70 base power rather, so it's pretty good. You can see obviously a few Pokemon, Aggron, Rhyperior, and then in terms of the Generation 7 Pokemon that can learn it, we have Tapu Bulu, Tapu Fini, to the Ultra Beast, Celesteela and Kartana, and then the mysterious Prism Pokemon, Necrozma. So I think this will be maybe used, but again, especially for some of these Steel types I'm looking at, they have better Steel type moves anyway. So who knows if it will make a huge impact. Next there is Purify, which is Pyukumuku's signature move basically. The user heals the target's status condition. If the move succeeds, it also restores the user's own health points. So I suppose if you're in double battle or VGC, you could heal your ally and then restore your own health at the same time. Or I guess in 1v1, in general battle, single battle, you could heal an opponent's status condition if it was not necessarily one you were worried about. Maybe you re-toxic them, they take a bit of poison damage, then you restore their health. You heal their condition, but you also restore your health at the same time. Who knows exactly how much health you restore, whether it's 50%, and it could be quite a good sort of strategy for Pyukumuku, because what you do is you toxic, they damage you. You also have counter as a possible move for Pyukumuku too, so you could maybe toxic, counter, let them take two turns damage. You've taken some damage here. You then purify next turn and you restore your health points almost to full, and they've taken counter damage, and then 2 turns of toxic damage, so it could be pretty good in that sense. We'll see exactly how people will use Peaking Move, I suppose. Next though is Revelation Dance, which of course is the signature move for Auroral. It's fire, electric, psychic, ghost type, depending on which type they are. 90 base power and a special move, which is of course what they focus on. Best move for Auroral, really, there's not much more to say apart from that. I love the description for this move though. The user attacks the target by dancing very hard. I love that. But yes, Auroral, good, but apart from that, it's nothing too amazing. Next there's Core Enforcer, which is a Zygarde completes signature move, I suppose. If the Pokemon the user has inflicted damage on has already used their moves, this move eliminates the effects of the target's ability. So basically, if Complete Zygarde moves second, and they've already used the move, it just removes the target's ability. So I suppose that's good in some cases, in terms of how long that happens for. Maybe it's until they leave the battle, or just for 1 turn. I'm assuming it's till they leave the battle. But apart from that, it's a base 100 power, Dragon type move, so I suppose it's pretty good for Zygarde. Complete anyway, but mostly this will be going to Ubers, so it's nothing too amazing. Then we have Trop Kick, which is of course Serena's signature move, physical, grass, base 70, and also lowers the target's attack stat, so it could be useful in some cases. And of course, if you're using Zarina in competitive, you'll probably have Trop Kick or a more damaging grass type move. So apart from that, there's nothing too much to talk about. Then we have Oranguru's signature move, which is Instruct, that I mentioned briefly earlier. I think this will be very used in VGC because it instructs the target to use the target's last move again. So say you're in battle with your very offensive Pokemon on your side as well. They use a move and you can say use it again, and then you get 2 attacks off in 1 turn. In terms of defensiveness, Oranguru is pretty defensive, so it can sort of last out. You just sit there and instruct. So it could be useful, as well as also maybe setting up Psychic Terrain to boost some Psychic type moves. Maybe if it pairs with a Psychic type Pokemon, who knows exactly, but it'd be pretty good. It was sort of, we've got to see how it turns out, but I think it'd be pretty good for Oranguru. Then we have Beak Blast, which if you haven't played the games already is a really cool move that is learnt by Toucannon. The user first heats up its beak and then attacks the target. So the way this works is at the start of the turn it says Toucannon is heating up its beak, and then everyone else moves, and if anyone makes direct contact with you while it's heating up, they get burnt, and at the end of that turn you then attack. So at first when I read this I thought it was like a two-stage move where like you heat up first turn and then you attack second turn, but no, it all happens in 1 turn. You just heat up at the start and attack right at the end, and it's really quite cool because of course if the opponent then attacks you, they get burnt and then you get to attack them anyway, so unless you're going to die it could be pretty good. And it's also at 100 base power as well, so you're doing decent damage too. So moving on, we have Clanging Scales, another signature move coming in, this time for Gomo. The user rubs the scales on its entire body and makes a huge noise to attack the opposing Pokemon. The user's defense stat goes down after the attack, so it could be good. 110 base power, so it's pretty powerful, but you do lower your defense, so it might be like a final ditch effort move for Gomo to use at the end of a battle, maybe, who knows exactly. Then we have Dragon Hammer, which is a signature move for Alolan Exeggutor. 90 base power, I suppose it's pretty good for this Pokemon, why not to use it. It's really, there's no extra effects, it's just 90 base power, Dragon type move. I'm sure Exeggutor also gets Dragon Tail possibly as well, and some other Dragon moves, so it might not be the best Dragon move it gets, but it'll be a decent one to learn. Then we have Brutal Swing. This is another TN move, so loads of Pokemon learn this. When I say loads, I mean like over 100, so I've just got Incineroar here because it does learn it. It's only a 60 base power Dark type move, so I don't think it'll be amazingly used. It'll sort of be like, yeah, you learn it if you need it, but apart from that, you'll have something more powerful. I do think it is a sort of an area of effect though, so you end up attacking everyone that's near you, because it also says everything in its vicinity, but I can't confirm that, it's just what I think from reading the description of the move. Then we have another TM move, which is Aurora Veil. This is learnt by less Pokemon, but it's still learnt by quite a few. I've picked out a few here, obviously Alolan Sandslash and Ninetales, Jinx, Articuno, Cryogonal, and obviously a few others, I think 13 in total. This move reduces damage from physical and special moves for 5 turns, but can only be used in a hailstorm. So I mean, for Ninetales it'd be pretty good because you get Snow Warning as a hidden ability, so you go in, use Aurora Veil the first turn, and you have reduced damage for 5 turns. In terms of what defensive Pokemon could make use of this to be more defensive, I haven't looked through them all particularly, but of course Weather isn't a huge factor anymore. It could be useful because of snow warning in some cases, but I don't think this is going to be an amazingly used move. Because, I mean, yes, okay, it reduces damage, but you have to have the hailstorm up first, and then it's sort of predictable that's going to happen. So it could be used, but it could not be as well. Then we have Shell Trap, which is a signature move for Turtonator. We've heard about this before, but it's 150 base power, so it's really quite high, but it's only if you attack with a physical move. So you see the user sets Shell Trap. If the user is hit by a physical move, the trap will explode, so it's 150 damage, but only if you get attacked. And obviously, generally, in competitive at least, you're not going to get attacked Turtonator with a physical move, especially if it's, you know, no Shell Trap from what you know. So it could be useful in storyline, but generally, probably not. And then we have Fleur Cannon, which is Magearna's signature move, as we know. It's sort of good, but then again it harshly lowers the user's special attack stat after use. It is 130 base power though, so it's basically a Fairy type Draco Meteor, 90% accuracy, very similar to that. Yeah, so basically, yeah, Fairy type Draco Meteor from Magearna, so it's used very similarly to that. The next move is a very interesting one, which I quite like, which is Psychic Fangs. The user bites a target with its psychic capabilities, but this can also destroy Light Screen and Reflect, so it's basically a psychic type version of Brick Break. It's psychic, it's physical, 85 base power, which is decent, and it's learnt by Sharpedo, Stoutland, and Bruxish. Bruxish is the only one that learns it by level up, and then these two get it via Egg move, I do believe, so I think it'd be quite interesting to see if this gets used. I mean, Brick Break you don't see used too much in competitive anyway, but in terms of, I guess, playing the game it might be useful, but in terms of competitive, I don't think it's going to get used too much, but I would like to see it used because it's a very funky move. Next up we have Stomping Tantrum, which is a physical ground type move at 75 base power. Driven by frustration, the user attacks the target. If the user's previous move has failed, the power of this move doubles, so you get a 150 base power move, which is quite powerful, but only if your previous attack failed. In terms of Pokemon get it, you can see here Mankey gets it, both versions of Marowak get it, Golurk gets it, Beware gets it, and Guzzlord gets it as well. In terms of what moves these guys have that could fail, Focus Punch obviously is one that, in terms of Primate, could probably get. I haven't looked too in depth for the other ones, so if they have moves that maybe they do a lot of damage, if they sometimes work. It doesn't mention what if your move misses, does that count as failing? I wouldn't think so. So I think it's most likely down to Focus Punch combination, so you can Focus Punch, but then if you fail, then you get to use this one, which is 150 base power and even more than Focus Punch. So it's a ground type move, so obviously the ones that you want to use it with would be Marowak and Golurk because they get the stab, but you could probably use it on other ones too. Then we have Shadow Bone, which is a Marowak or Lola Marowak signature move. Goes to physical, 85 base power, and can also lower the target's defense. Pretty good all round. I wouldn't be too surprised to see this used a whole lot. Then we have a Cellarock, which is the signature move of Lycanroc midday form, so not midnight, only midday. It's basically a rock type quick attack, rock type Aqua Tail. I'm guessing if you use a midday Lycanroc in competitive, you will have a Cellarock as a move, because why not? But generally Lycanroc's base speed is pretty good anyway, so I'm not sure you really need to use it, but you could have it as an extra sort of insurance. Then we have Liquidation, which is a new water type move. It's physical, 85 base power, slams into the target using a full force blast of water, and may also lower the target's defense, so very similar to Shadow Bone as we saw from Marowak. This is learned by Corsola, Tortuga and Caracosta. Toxapex gets it, as well as Araquanid, and then Glossopod gets it too, so mainly for the last three we're looking at. Toxapex is not very offensive, and neither is Araquanid, but Glossopod could make a lot of use of this, and could be sort of not a signature move, but a move it uses quite a lot, and is a staple for its set apart, as well as obviously the one we looked at the start. I can't remember what it's called. Then we have Prismatic Laser, which is a signature move of Necrozma. It's 160 base power, but the user can't move on the next turn, so basically it's a psychic hyper beam for Necrozma, so it could be good, but obviously it's going to Ubers anyway, so it might be useful for just KOing little young gooses in the wild, maybe in the game, who knows. Then, speaking of legendary signature moves, we have Spectral Thief for Marshadow, which is not as powerful, it's only 90 base power, but the user hides in the target's shadow, steals their stat boost and then attacks, so in some situations this could be really quite powerful if someone's trying to set up on you, but apart from that, again, legendary, probably going to Ubers, nothing too much to say there. Then we have Sunsteel Strike, carrying on the legendary signature moves, which is obviously Solgaleo's one. User slams into the target with force of Meteor, can be used on the target regardless of its abilities. It's a physical steel type move, 100 base power, pretty decent. And of course, to follow up that, we have Moon Ghost Beam, which is a special ghost type move with 100 base power, and basically just the same, just swaps types and move type, I suppose. Then we have, shoved in the middle of the legendaries, we have this Tearful Look move. The user gets teary-eyed to make the target lose its combative spirit. This lowers the target's attack and special attack stats. It's only learnt by Bonsly, Sudowoodo and Wishy Washy, so it's safe to say this will not see any use competitively at all, but that is that. Then we have Zing Zap, which is Togedemaru's signature move. A strong electric blast crashes down on the target, giving it electric shock. This may also make the target flinch, so it's a pretty good move for Togedemaru overall. 80 base power, can't complain too much there. Then we have Nature's Madness, which is obviously the signature move for the Tapus. It's a furry, special move, 90% accuracy only, and it hits the target with a force of nature, halving their health points. It's basically Super Fang for the Tapu Kokos, but it's not 100% accurate, so I wouldn't see this. You could use it for competitive sets to, if you can against a particularly bulky Pokemon, take them down to half and not have to worry about their defenses. But generally, it's not going to be amazing. There will be better moves for the Tapu Kokos, or for the Tapus. And then finally, of course, we have Silvali's signature move, Multi-Attack, which is a physical move, normal by default, but can change into any other type depending on their own type. And yes, 90 base power, so it's pretty decent there. Those are all of the new moves in Generation 7, not including Z moves though. I'll probably do a separate video on Z moves because they're a bit different since they're a set few, but you can access them from all different types of moves. But I'll make a video covering it. So let me know what you think about the new moves introduced in this generation. Are you liking a lot of the moves? You've got a particular favourite that you really want to sort of bring on your Pokemon and spam? Let me know down below, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button. But for now, this is going to be it for today, so I shall see you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.